Let's do this again as if. So guys, it is Tuesday, January 23rd, 3 weeks in, 49 left over today. A hodgepodge of things that we've got to cover. I like to refer to it as This Week in Real Estate. And one of these, to start with, again, I was hoping to show you this recording, but now it's not there to where you guys can hear it. So Martha and Barb, is Barb on with us, Martha, or is it just, okay.
Just
So,
me.
Just you. So, Martha, if you would, I've got you, and we'll do it this way instead. Share with us what, again, we had discovered about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. It's out there, but it's one that I think we all need to make sure that we know about. Can you share?
Yep, absolutely. So Barb had a listing appointment this week, and during the course of that appointment, she found that the seller had I'm not coming up with the word, Darwin, a deed, a
We'll
lien,
call it a future listing
memorandum.
contract.
Yep,
And
had
the
a
company is
memorandum.
what is it, MVA or MVR?
Yep, in Howell, and the sellers had signed this contract that allowed this company, if the house is ever sold within the next 40 years, that they would be the listing company. And there has, I reviewed the document with Barb, and she said, have you seen this before? Is it even legal? Because it isn't very common. I said, yep, we talked about this 1.5 years ago. It is something we're seeing a lot more in the metropolitan areas than we have been in Shiawassee County. First one I've seen here, but it was definitely a contract with the seller and this MV Real Estate or Realty. And it is legal, even though it's very shady, in my opinion.
Yeah. So essentially what this MV Realty, I believe, is their proper name. They're based out of Florida, and they have come into, primarily it appears, I'll call it the outlying metropolitan area. And they seem to be targeting more toward what I'll use the term elderly. They're going to them and saying, look, we'll pay you $500. We'll pay $850. A little bit dependent upon the value, but we'll give you money now for the exclusive right to sell your home. And it is then recorded. There's a memorandum of recording that says you will list the home with us. And oh, by the way, successors and heirs, you too are required to list a home with us. If you don't, there is a 3% penalty. Sound familiar? Sounds like they're going to get paid. They're just paying money in advance for the right to list the property within 40 years. It is a recorded document. It is legal. It is binding. And guys, unless if you have what Channel 7 found with this family in Clarkston, that the seller was, what's the word, of not right, sound, and body, dementia. At the time that they signed it, it's legal and it's binding. So the only thing that we can really tell you, educate your sphere of influence. It's really educate the younger that can take care of mom and dad, is what I've heard every time that I've heard this. It's not the younger generations. It's people that don't really understand fully what they're signing, and it sounds like they're getting free money. That becomes the bottom line. All right. So run pre-title, because here's the worst thing that could happen. You do all this work, you get the property sold, everybody's doing their thing, and then you do title, only to find out that basically your seller's in a really bad position, and they may pay and end up paying an additional 3%. Okay. Yeah. Hey, Martha, is that possible for you to go ahead and send out what you sent to me in regards to the news article that you found in
Yep,
that report?
absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. So we'll get that out to you, Holly. Great request. I got a question here. No, it is not cancelable. It is legal binding, and the only reason in this particular case that this was canceled was due to the dementia. So the company apparently, I'm sure they had to do a little bit with Channel 7 being involved in it also, but the dementia. So not right, sound, body, mind and body canceled. So, so Martha's going to send that out to where we can actually share that with you guys. Another thing then that I want to share with you that's come out, I want to give this clarification. And so share, we want this case. Oops. All right. This is another one. So I've been out kind of making sure everybody is up to date, current, fully understand the buyer contract, the seller contract, how it works. So compensation. What we need to make sure everybody understands is that we know what the full compensation is, right? So in this, we're putting, here is the full compensation. It's a fee of $395 and a commission equal to 6% of the purchase price. It's then, again, now put out that here's the offer of compensation, and the seller is authorizing us to offer this compensation. What I want to make sure everybody knows is the only thing that we know when we look at the MLS, that's the offer of compensation from the listing broker. When we are the listing agent, and by the way, think about it, you're the only one that knows what the full compensation was signed to up here. What we need to know is even though a broker may be offering 3 down here, doesn't mean that they collected 6%. We only know what we're getting in the MLS. And you as the agent are the only one to know what the full compensation is. But this is the place where it's an authorization and an agreement that we're collecting, in our case within our company, 6%, and that we're offering 3%. We also know that what we've been stating is that we're going 0 for a sub-agent, 3 for a buyer's agent, and a transaction coordinator. Now, here's what's come to my attention. Where there is, I'll call it a misunderstanding in regards to, one, why we would offer full compensation to a transaction coordinator, and 2, when would that ever come up? Let me do this. Here, okay. So I'm going to pull up, and if you've got one handy in front of you, you can take a look at it. This is the agency disclosure. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever really looked at this in a while, but it says specifically what we need to do, what it is, and what the agents at a minimum are owing a client, principal, buyer or seller. And then it describes what each form of agency is. And then here's a transaction coordinator. So I want you to catch this. This is real important that we know this. So it says, let's take and break it down. A transaction coordinator is a licensee. So that's the first part to this. A transaction coordinator is a licensee. A huge misunderstanding that I've been finding out is people are thinking like there's some mega producer and they've got an individual who's unlicensed and they are called a transaction coordinator. That's not what we're dealing with in this situation. A transaction coordinator, when it comes to agency, is a licensed individual. And then it goes on, who is not acting as an agent of either the seller or the buyer. Okay? No need to expand upon that. However, I want you to catch this part. Yet is providing services to complete a real estate transaction. Now, here's the next misinterpretation of what that means. Everybody goes to the point of thinking that they're not doing anything more than coordinating a closing, putting things on paper, and getting it there. But let's read this again. Yet is providing services to complete a real estate transaction. So you've got to kind of, and I threw this out, everybody knows how a parachute works best, right? When it's open. So as I say this, I need you to open your mind. If you're thinking, what? Darwin must have been smoking something before he jumped on today. Open your mind to this. But here's the thing. Could a transaction coordinator, based on this definition, provide all types of real estate services that would lead to a real estate transaction or to complete a real estate transaction? What I mean by that is this. Could a transaction coordinator, agent, work with a buyer and go show them houses? So for faces, I can see everybody do this because the answer is yes. Could they not then working with, notice the words I'm using, with a buyer, help that buyer create a purchase agreement? The answer is yes. Could they not then work with the listing agent in getting that agreement negotiated with the buyer? And again, I hope you continue to notice the words I'm using because you have to use the right words. And when they get that agreement accepted between a buyer and a seller, would not the transaction coordinator agent probably go out there and give access and get the inspection done? Might they not later on meet an appraiser? Would they not do all the things leading up, setting up a closing, completing a transaction, because that's the way that this is worded? Could they not provide those services? And the answer is yes. Here's where people get a little confused at. The transaction coordinator is not an agent for either party and therefore owes no fiduciary duties to either party. And now you're going, well, yeah, but they can, there's certain, and we actually discussed it here this morning. And if anybody's been with me on this, here's a piece of paper. Let it represent a transaction coordinator. What we know is they cannot fall either way, right? And yet, what does the paper do? It's going to fall, guys. It's going to go one side or the other. So transaction coordinators, from an aspect of us compensating a transaction coordinator, we need to do this for one primary reason. And then we'll discuss why, because I've said previously, I don't know why we would ever not, or why we would ever want to be a transaction coordinator. So let's take a look at this stuff. We know, trying to look, see, guys, I want to show this whiteboard. So you may want to change your view as to how you see this to where you just got it locked to the speaker. But what you guys know is that in the MLS, we promote SABANA. What we are saying now is go 033. We want to sever any responsibility for what the agent working with or for the buyer may do. So that's easy. We don't compensate a sub-agent, seller's agent. We're going to offer 3%, obviously, if they're representing the buyer and they're not representing our seller. They're representing their buyer, they're not representing our seller. Offer full compensation to a transaction coordinator / non-agent. Why? Well, when we take a look at a buyer's representation agreement, it's like we were going to run into a buyer who will say, okay, I don't want representation. I don't want to be responsible for paying you 3%. You with me? So we can't go in as a sub-agent. We can't go in as a buyer's agent. And if we were one of those companies that for a transaction coordinator offered 0, what's your option to getting paid with this buyer? You have none. So we want to offer this. And that, by the way, is the scenario where I would tell you you'd probably want to go to a transaction coordinator. But that's only after I help them understand how we get compensated. All right? I hope that makes sense. It's the reason why we want to offer 3%, and that would be the most likely reason that we would ever be a transaction coordinator. Otherwise, we know, I've been professing out there that if you have somebody coming to you saying, hey, would you put this together? Just because of that scenario doesn't mean you're a transaction coordinator. Go ahead and represent the party that came to you, even if your broker, your manager has approved a lower percentage, because the typical is a buyer and a seller came together and said they need somebody to coordinate this, get it to the point of a closing. And just because we're saying we're coordinating the closing doesn't make us a transaction coordinator. Go ahead and represent them. That's a whole heck of a lot easier than being the transaction coordinator and trying to stay exactly in the middle without falling one side or the other. All right. A non-agent. Wow, Holly, you're taking me way back. I believe non-agent was actually a term used prior to a transaction coordinator. So what does that mean in reality? I don't know. To me, they're one and the same, to tell you the truth. It's not, or at least for what I've seen, not really been defined. But again, if a transaction coordinator, we can't compensate an unlicensed individual. So it's not that they're not a licensee. So I just think that was a term that came out way back when in 95. But non-agent, that's really where this term comes from in the MLS. We'll have to run it from there. All right, so let's see that. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's go back to a screen share. Because the question comes up, what happens if we have a shortfall and we want to collect upon our full commission that we have a right to collect? Let's see. Well, we all know that the buyer's agency is in here, and it says, did I pull that one up? I did not pull it up. But it's in here, and what we did, I'm just going to pull one of them up here, guys. So here's what we know. We put it in here, and that the compensation is $395 plus 3% of the purchase price. We know that we've got the credit. So the question comes up, well, what happens when we don't get the full amount provided by the seller broker, the seller's broker? What are the options? Option number one, let's use 2.5%. They offer 2.5%. We're short 0.5%. We want to get our 0.5% because that's what the contract says. Well, in writing, it says from the seller or the seller's listing broker. So if we aren't getting it from the listing broker because we know that is happening here, then the buyer could go to the seller, asking the seller through the purchase agreement to pay 0.5% of the purchase price to be applied toward buyer's broker's fee. So then you say, well, Darwin, is that something that's out there? The answer is yes. And that is going to be, I've got to go back to this. Let me get my share back for you guys again. This is almost like I know what I'm doing. Okay, the share, we're coming back to here. Bum, 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 bum. Let me go back. So everybody, so what I'm showing all of you now, I always have to remember, both Remine, Transaction Desk have clauses. So when you're in a transaction, and I don't know which purchase agreement this is. This is a practice file for me. Okay, old purchase agreement. But here's what we know. We have a paragraph to be able to catch everything, right? And when we used to click in this is what would pop up. And what they would add to the clauses compensation shortfall buyer agency for PA. I'm going to click on this, let it drop it in. Oops. And this should be in Transaction Desk, so if somebody looks and finds it's not there, please advise your manager and let us know. We will make sure it gets uploaded. But here's what it would do. Seller to contribute, in this case, the scenario I'm using, 0.5%. Make sure you get it in there, 0.5% of the purchase price to be applied toward buyer's broker's fee. That's how simple it would be to make up the difference. I don't want to overcomplicate it because it is that simple. I will give you clarification. Something that came out, Mark Scully from our AAA office in Sterling Heights took me down to the floor, beat me up, smacked me upside the head a couple of times, said, "Darwin, you're wrong." And he was right. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was wrong. Here's something you need to know. According to the Code of Ethics, if you want, you may go to the listing broker and ask if they will compensate at the 3%. It must be done prior to and outside of the negotiations of a purchase agreement. Now make sure you're hearing me correctly on that, because we've always thought this was a violation of the Code of Ethics. Well, what's a violation of the Code of Ethics is trying to negotiate the offer of compensation from a listing broker as part of a purchase agreement. But as long as you do it prior to and not tied to a purchase agreement, the broker may reach out to the listing broker asking for compensation of your 3%. I'm looking at faces that I can look at and see if there's anything that anybody's got a question for. There we go. Yes.
So I want to be really clear. So in the past, we were told that we could go to the seller and ask for it on behalf of the buyer. Let me rephrase that. That the buyer was asking for it on behalf of the agent. But now you're saying we can't do that, that we're going directly to the agent and we're doing it before we write the purchase agreement?
Great clarification question. And the answer is I still believe that the easiest way and probably the best way to do this is for the buyer to go to the seller, as I demonstrated with that purchase agreement, asking the seller to pay the difference. So we're getting 2.5 from the listing broker. The buyer is asking the seller to pay the remaining 0.5% that they owe us through the purchase agreement. Now, That's what I would say would be the first way to do it. However, it is, and this is what I want y'all to know, it's 16.6 in the Code of Ethics is where this is addressed. You may, as a broker, go to the listing broker in advance. You may, not a requirement, you don't have to, but it is acceptable through the Code of Ethics to approach the listing broker, asking them if they would adjust their compensation, their offer of compensation, as long as it is done in advance and is not tied to a purchase agreement. That's the key. And believe me, I was fighting with Mark on this. I looked it up, and son of a gun if he was right. So it was a little bit of a shocker for me. So
now,
again,
so now Luigi is going to call the broker and make that request. Is that what you're
let
saying?
me not, it's not that Luigi is. Luigi could. Okay? You have two options as to the way that you could do it. And what we're speaking of here is one way that could be done. I don't think it's the preferred method. I think the preferred method is the buyer to put it as part of their purchase agreement. And you got to hear me on that very, very clearly. It is the buyer making the request to the seller as part of their purchase agreement. We're not negotiating the offer of compensation as part of the purchase agreement. The offer of compensation must be done in advance. And my recommendation would be is if you ever want to do that, go to your manager broker first. Let them make that contact, because they better be prepared for what 16.6 says if they're going to do this. And if you're lost, use the clause that's part of Remine and should be in transaction desk also, which simply says seller to pay blank percent of the purchaser price to be applied toward buyer's broker's fee. Okay? And there's huge technicalities with the simplicity of that. I think, Brenda, you got a question there.
I do. Okay, so from the buyer, or I'm sorry, the seller's perspective, if you're going to the seller through the addendum amendment.
I'm not, the buyer is.
Exactly. Well, we're writing it up on behalf of our client. In a case of multiple offers or not, from the perspective of the seller, they could be looking at that as a concession. And quite possibly, had that not verbiage been included, they may have been given or have received an accepted offer. So it can be somewhat, I'm sorry, I have grandchildren.
I know those ones.
He's saying hi.
So yeah, I think what you're saying, Brenda, is that we need to be aware of that. Look, if you're in a multiple situation in regards to offers, you may not want to pursue that shortfall, right? So you have to take that into consideration the same way that they would if they were looking for concessions. If they had a way without doing it without concessions, if they're in a multiple offer situation, they may want to stay away from that. So all things need to be considered when you are looking at collecting your full compensation, without doubt. Absolutely. Great to consider there.
Darwin, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Holly.
So you're saying that we don't have to pursue it, but it's in the contract that we are supposed to get paid 3%. So do we have to write an addendum in our buyer's contract so that they don't have to pay the 3%?
Well, treat it kind of the way, great question, Holly. If you would think about it with your question, the answer would be, it really, if the buyer was covering their backside, they would say that, hey, we're accepting the compensation offered by the listing broker as compensation paid in full. So if a buyer really wanted to make sure that they were covering their backside, yeah, they would say, hey, could you give me an addendum that says that with this transaction, you're accepting the offer of compensation with listing broker is paid in full. But you're also the one who's going to pursue that. So if you're just accepting it and you're not going to pursue it, then no, I wouldn't worry about it. And I would think that most buyers wouldn't have the foresight to actually check on that on their own. So we're okay. Really, it would be if you wanted to do that, just to put the mind at ease of the buyer. Great question. Guys, what else do you have out there? Because otherwise, I covered 5 points today that I wanted to make sure. So just a quick review. One, we brought up the aspect of this MV Realty, where they're signing a contract, which is 40 years. It is legal, binding at this point, unless if somewhere in the courts it gets turned where they say, no, you were, what's the word? Oh, geez, you're taking advantage of people. Martha, what was the word you used? Because I think you nailed it with that one. You remember? That's what the courts are doing and attorneys are saying out there. But anyway, there's a big word for it. Two, we talked about the compensation clarification with the seller. We talked about the transaction coordinator, the reason for, and the clarification of what a transaction coordinator is, what they do, why we should compensate at 3% of full compensation equal to the buyer agent. We talked about why we may actually end up as a transaction coordinator in a real estate transaction. Again, rare, but it leaves us the option. If we've got a buyer who doesn't want to pay or commit to be paying us, that would be an option. And then, what was our last one? No, that nailed it all. So guys, those were the 5 points. There you go. Deceptive practices is what the MV Realty, where attorneys are saying that this is what they're doing, and especially who they're preying upon. So I'll see that, Martha. Thank you getting that out. So CBP, y'all got that. I will get it out to all of the folks on our gold side so that you can see that report, and also a news article that Martha and Barb were able to find. So gang, with that, let me just check real quick, make sure that I've got everything in the chat. I think Kevin, I think I answered that as far as, yeah, just get with the listing or your broker manager, and everything else is good. So that wraps it up, guys. That's another Hot Topic Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed it. It was This Week in Real Estate with everything that comes up, but thus the term we're using, hot topic, what's going on right now. I hope you have a fantastic week, and you know what to do. Just get out there, go see people. Have a great one.
Thanks, Darwin.